Do you expect to see a more confident Herbert, a guy that can come in here and make the plays to win this game as opposed to making 40 or 50 really good throws and it coming short? Do you expect to see that change?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest change this year with Justin Herbert in general. When Jim Harbaugh, he ain't stupid, right? He came there, he knew exactly who he had. He's walking into the locker room with keys to the Ferrari. That Ferrari is named Justin Herbert. He know he got a quarterback who can throw, but he wanted to scale it back where Justin didn't have to throw 70% of the game for those guys to win, right? He's going out there being efficient, being accurate, making smart decisions, and making the plays when you have to. And that bond between them two, man, I know they showed a lot of it on TV and stuff like that, but around the building, it's something special. They got something, and I don't know like Andy Reid and Mahomes, like, behind the scenes what it looks like or anything like that, but they got a bond, man. They got a hell of a bond together. And I think that coming down there to KC, but one of the biggest things to watch out for is really who makes the least amount of mistakes, because it's going to be a very physical game. And I know the last two games, even if the Chiefs won, they didn't win how they wanted to win, but it's one of those things that you'll take it. You'll take it. And people say, oh, when the Chargers barely beat Atlanta and everybody's complaining, oh, they should have did this and not that good. I said, do you think the Chiefs are complaining about a blocked field goal or botched snap? I said, absolutely not. That is a win. They'll take it, watch the film, clean it up, and come back. And so this game is going to come down to mistake-free football, because whoever throws the most interceptions, whoever throws – get sacked the most. And it's hard to say because Mahomes was sacked, 5 times the last game or close to it. So
back to back.
Yeah. So you look at that and like, oh, man, we hitting this dude and they're still winning. They're still winning. I'm going to watch Chris Jones and Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. I'm going to watch those matchups. The linebackers of KC are flowing nice. They're making big plays and stuff like that, being part of that front seven. So I think that the first couple quarters of this game is going to be just body shots. Heavy haymakers, body shots. And I think sometime in that second half, depending on how the game shake out, it'll start opening up to more spread offense, more, on both sides of the ball, by the way, getting Kelsey in those option routes and start working the defense. But I think it's going to be a game of chess that first half. Who running the ball, who's executing, really establishing dominance, right? And just kind of seeing who's going to kind of buckle on the first power punches. But it's tough. I try to tell anybody, playing down there this time of the year, it is tough as hell. It is cold. Those fans are loud. That field is hard. I mean, it is. Those conditions are tough, and they're going to have the crowd behind them, and it's a divisional opponent. So, and I want to say this too, because their last couple of games, the Chiefs have shown, especially on their tackles, offensive tackles. That's probably the biggest concern that I'm looking at, as them blocking for Patrick. And so with the Chargers playing as well as they are right now and getting after the quarterback, I think they had, several sacks before Atlanta. They're getting after the guys up front. They're going to have to figure out what Kelsey is not going to do or have a free release. He's going to have to chip one of those guys before he get out into coverage. They're not going to be able to flex him out and get him off the line of scrimmage. They're going to have some help, because if they plan on blocking both of those guys off the edges, and I'm not just saying 2, 3, because Tuli's playing well now. So they got to block 3 guys off the edges. They're going to have to fix that early, or get the ball out of Patrick's hands.
Do you think this team is gaining confidence in these kinds of games? Do you think that they're collecting data, or do you think this is just an example of them maybe just being simply a year away?
Yeah, it's funny you said that, and you're right, because you got to beat some of these teams that's over 500. You got to beat some of these teams who you possibly could see down the road again. And I try to remind Chargers fans after that Atlanta game where they were upset on how they played and everything else. And I said, listen, this time last year, Chargers fans were begging for those type of wins, right? They were begging for it to have, win by 3-4 points and get those games. And so the good thing about Jim Harbaugh, and this is something I saw during the offseason, because I was around the team a little bit during the offseason before the season started. There was a different energy. It was a immediate culture shift where these guys are going to go out and compete. You didn't know how the season was going to go, how many wins they were going to have, and how quickly they were going to turn around. But they were going to compete every single game, which they are. And I think with Jim Harbaugh's mentality, running the football, protecting Justin Herbert, which is why you go out and draft a guy like Joe Alt. And you look on the defense side of the ball, and what Jesse Minter has done to this team immediately and changed the mentality and how these guys play. If you're running the football and you're playing great defense, you always got a chance, right? So you're not necessarily coming in during the season worrying about a big play wide receiver. Yes, you would like Quentin Johnson to go out and turn it up, get back on track, and be your guy that you drafted. but you're not necessarily really relying on him to go out and win games. So anything that he do at that point is a plus. And if you look back at Jim Harbaugh and what he's done in Michigan, what did he do? He ran the hell out of the football. And most of his plays that he hit were big plays down the field off of play action because people are so worried about, the running game. And so I think his mentality was, first, let's come in here and change this culture, right? We're a hard-nosed team. Let's define who we are. Because let me tell you, man, I was at some of those games last year, and I can't tell you how many games I've lost my voice just screaming because those guys, they're not lining up. They're looking around and trying to see who's calling what, and which the defenses always look like they were on their heels. They never played fast. They didn't even look like they were having fun last year playing football. They were just out there and okay with getting beat. Raiders hanging 63 points on this team would never happen. It would never happen because those guys will go out fighting for every inch because it's mentality change. So I'm impressed with what Jim Harbaugh did, but you still got to take into account what you said, right? You got to beat some of those teams over 500 because they're in a wild card spot right now. So when you get in the playoffs, you're going to have to see one of those teams that's a playoff team above 500, one of those teams possibly that you lost too early on. And so that's why it's more critical now that they started going to the playoffs, hitting that momentum switch.